Hey, Anjuli, welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you at the Sisterhood.
Hi, it is great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so are you at home right now with all your people?
I am. I'm home with my 5 little kids and my wonderful husband. We are together.
You are together. What ages are your kids?
13 to 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And what do you do in California?
Well, typically, if this was what would be a normal, is today Thursday?
Mhm.
Today's Thursday.
I know we're losing track of days.
Woo, it's tough. My kids are partially homeschooled, so on Thursdays they would be at school, and I'd be home with my toddler, and we would be hitting Trader Joe's and Target and eating mac and cheese. And I would also be running one Instagram feed, which is called the Moms We Love Club. And that's where we support moms who are enduring long-term hardship, and also writing for different blogs, one main one called Encourage, and then also doing what I can to connect with women online.
So great. So what spurred you to start that Instagram account in your own life?
The Moms We Love Club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's an incredible story. Um, as you do, probably late in the night, sometimes you're hopping on Facebook, and this one particular night for me, I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw a GoFundMe for a mom who had a disease called chronic migrainosis. Have you heard of that?
No.
Yeah, it's pretty much the most awful disease you could imagine. It's basically having a migraine your entire life. So the sweet mama is in her room in the dark, basically with a throbbing headache, flu-like symptoms, and the whole GoFundMe story was about how her husband carries her to the shower, brushes her teeth, feeds her. I mean, she's the same age as us, and she's just kind of in a prison of pain. And so I just had this idea. I kind of thought, well, I can't take her a meal, but what I can do is I kind of looked at my hands and was like, what do I have? I had at the time probably a following on Instagram of maybe 5,000 or 6,000. And I thought, okay, I have this little body of people. What if I asked them to all post her picture on the same day, and we all pray for her, and we all just donate like 5, 10, 15 bucks. And so I started the Moms We Love Club, and that happened. Her name is Lindsay, and that first month we raised $14,000. And the month after that we raised $75,000, and it just exploded. So it was really this idea of, wow, we do not have to build a big platform. All we are invited to do by God is to dig a well right where your feet are in the earth this moment. You just dig right there and you will find water. And all you have to do is offer it to people. And that's really what the Moms We Love Club is about.
Well, that's how I found you originally, was
Oh, I didn't
through,
know that.
yeah, I follow the Moms We Love Club.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, it's so inspiring to see people come together for a stranger. But I get the sense that most of the people who follow and who participate and contribute are moms.
Yeah.
And so we just have that bond of, you are going through something so difficult while trying to raise children. And we know that life doesn't stop.
No.
Life does not stop when a medical crisis comes up.
No.
So I've really appreciated it. And it's been fun to watch it grow and watch you lead in it.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. It's one of the most exciting places in my life, just to see people come together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like kind of what you guys do here, it's like a sisterhood,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like, that's what we do. We vulnerably carry people. It's not always pretty. It's not perfect, but we hold hands and we keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of life goes on, we are finding ourselves collectively in a pandemic something that we have never experienced as a generation, as a culture, as a country that we can remember. And we are trying to lead our children and continue making dinner and changing diapers and doing laundry and working if we do paid work while this chaos is going on. How has that impacted you as you have been maintaining family life in California, which was one of the earlier places to shut down across the country?
It is absolutely insane. I mean, I feel like we are seeing the most beautiful parts of humanity and the most awful parts of humanity. And that's hard to see. For me, it's really doing my best to lean in to what God is doing through this as a family and with my kids and as a mom and as an author, and really trying to pay attention to some of the places in my life and my soul that are being triggered by the chaos out there.
So you wrote a book recently called Stay, which could not be more appropriate because we literally are all staying right now exactly where we are. And can you talk a little bit about what that book is about, but also how it applies to us right now where we are in our places where we can't leave?
Yeah, I know. I don't know if it's like the best thing ever for a launch of a book or like the worst thing. I don't know. It's like, It's great because the title of my book is Stay, but it's also a tough time in our economy. But no, I feel like it's a gift to offer this book to the world right now because it is that it's a tender call to stay right where you are, and not just right where you are, but really in the places where you most resist being. And I think as this world pandemic is happening, there's a soul pandemic, and all of a sudden, especially right now, have you noticed this in the past couple of days? Right when, for San Diego at least, right when this hit, there's a lot of adrenaline. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, okay, what do we do right now? What fire do we need to put out? How do we do school? How do we do work? How do we get groceries? And now a week, 10 days into that, after that, it's like, whoa, there's almost this wave of numbness, of apathy even. And so, right, so it's me, this book Stay is a call to pay attention to the movements of your soul. And instead of running, avoiding, or fixing, the invitation is to just feel your feelings. I think we're really good at thinking our feelings, but the invitation is to know it's okay to feel them, and not just feel them, but allow God to meet you in them.
Can you tell us a little bit about your personal story with that? When did you start seeing that in your own life where you were thinking your feelings but not really feeling them?
Yeah, absolutely. I was probably 25, so that feels like forever ago, but I was at a place in my life where I was in seminary. I was working in a church. I was doing all the things that a Christian is supposed to do, right? And yet I was an absolute mess. I was a disaster. I was constantly battling anxiety. I was close to, if not depressed. And it was this experience for me is like, wait a second, I am doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm a complete wreck inside. Like something has to be wrong. Either this Christianity, it's a joke. Either, everyone else gets it and I don't, or there's something going on in my soul that I don't understand. And so at that moment, at that time, I had an opportunity to go on a 3-week isolated retreat you're near Gig Harbor, right?
Yeah.
So my retreat was at this little island called Fox Island. Have you heard of it?
Mm-hmm.
It's really one of the most beautiful places. So it's small, right? I mean, how many people live on that little island?
Tiny.
Not many.
No, it's really small. So there on Fox Island, there's a little cabin, and I lived there for 21 days by myself, and basically had no internet, no phone, no exercising, no alcohol, no entertainment. But really, it was this moment to go to the depths of my soul and face my biggest demons and my darkest secrets. And that was a time where, yeah, I stayed. And through that, like sitting and staying with them was the most radical transformation of what it means to not just know the love of God, but experience the love of God. And I say that because that was really a profound experience for me. But I also know that not all of us can move to Fox Island for 3 weeks.
Especially
Sign me
now.
up, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially now. And so I think that propelled me into a journey of what does it mean to stay with Jesus and stay with the truth of my soul and heart all the time. When I'm doing dishes, when I'm doing laundry, when I'm checking homework, when I'm scrolling through Instagram, what does it mean to stay? And I think we can start to identify those things in our life as, wow, there's some really small moments and bigger moments and really big moments. And maybe a small moment for us who are at home every day to start paying attention is, what are those small places in your life where you experience resistance? I think resistance is one of the best gifts we have to understand what's going on in our hearts. Mm-hmm. So for instance, I'll give you an example, right? I'll ask you guys this, maybe. Is there a person in your life, if they texted you this moment, it would make you afraid? Or if they texted you, would make you anxious or upset or irritated?
Irritated. I would say there are people that I would be like, I'm not going to respond right away.
Right.
I don't want to respond. I might not be afraid of them, but I don't want to deal with them.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that's a great moment, Alex, where it's like that moment of identifying that feeling, right? What is the feeling? It's annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you, if you had to stay with that, stay, what are you annoyed about?
Mm-hmm. What they're asking from me, probably. What I think they're projecting onto me by their request.
And that would that make you feel like responsible or not seen or overwhelmed?
Yeah, I get overwhelmed pretty easy.
Yeah.
So that's probably an easy response, but I think maybe resentful.
Yeah.
If I feel like they're putting something on me that's not my responsibility to carry, and yet I don't stay, right? If I put the phone down and I walk away, then I am putting off dealing with that resentment.
Yes.
Rather than pushing through.
Well, even that, it's that moment, right? It's this really moment to start identifying your strategy to not deal with the reality of your heart. Mm-hmm. And for you or myself or anyone, there is that, okay, one place I'd go with strategy is just, I'm not going to return their text. I'm going to avoid it. Or if I return the text, it'll be maybe a little passive aggressive. That's what I would do. And so it's noticing these strategies instead of moving to that strategy to push through or fix it. It's staying with that place and opening your heart to God. God, I feel so irritated right now and overwhelmed because I feel like I am responsible to take care of everything and everyone. And how that moves us into this really tender place with Jesus. And those kind of moments, that's a small one right now. Okay, maybe even a bigger one in our lives is even our finances right now. Okay, the bank statement just came. I'm not gonna look. I'm not gonna open that envelope or that email because I don't really want to know how much money I spent at Target this month. I just want to, I'm just not going to look. And so that's a strategy I use. Instead, really what the feeling is, I'm kind of afraid, and I'm kind of afraid to see that bank statement, and I'm afraid what my husband might think when he sees it. So I'm going to just kind of put it off as long as I can. Instead, there's this moment to stay where it's like, wow, God, I am so afraid of what my husband's going to say, that maybe he'll be angry or upset when he sees how much I spent. And I'm already coming up with justification. Oh, well, we needed that. We had to get that, instead of moving into the space of, no, God, I'm just really afraid. And then I think there's bigger things where it's like, wow, there's some real trauma in the lives of women. I mean this honestly, every single woman you encounter, there's a trauma. And I'm not just talking about abuse. There's definitely abuse, but there's other trauma, smaller, but just as painful and worthy of being addressed. And as women, we just sweep it under the rug. Oh yeah, I dealt with that one time. It's small. It can be as small as your sibling that really incessantly teased you, or a coach that shamed you. It's just like, we just are so quick to not want to see ourselves. And so, yeah, right, this invitation to stay is always there, always present. Jesus is always using every circumstance to invite our hearts to meet with him.
So how do you feel like this pandemic that is really causing people to stay home, how is it bringing more of those to the surface?
Right? Because I feel like all these structures that we have depended on that have made us feel safe are cracking. And so that cracking, like those strategies, right? Like before, if you had a stable income and now you don't, wow. Before, it felt like you had control. I mean, none of us ever had control, but we felt a false sense of control. And now that as those are cracking and breaking, our hearts are leaking, if that's a good way to say it. Our hearts are leaking. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that God is in that. And I think the one thing it requires of women right now, moms, young moms, grandmas, all ages, it takes a tremendous amount of courage to stay when our hearts are leaking and we can't use all the Band-Aids we've used don't work anymore.
So I know we can't go to Fox Island, but
Yeah.
What are some ways that people can stay? For example, for me, journaling is a way that I stay in something instead of trying to escape it, because I will write about it and I will really allow myself to feel in that moment what I'm feeling about whatever it is. Are there some practices that you have, some spiritual practices that help you to stay?
I think that's a great thing, journaling. Well, I mean, this sounds really, really simple, but I think it's really helpful. Can you imagine one of those charts that you may have seen before where they have like 25 different faces and they're all different emotions? I think that's a big one. I think it's very simple. It's actually something we might even teach a child to do, right? I don't know what the ages of your kids, but it's something I might teach my 5-year-old. Like, what do you feel? Name that feeling. Because again, the temptation is to think our feeling. To feel our feeling is much more challenging. We go straight to fixing it. And so I would invite women to find that face on the chart and just say it. I feel sad. Just say it. Name it. Just hold space for yourself to be sad before you run or before. And I think we can even, honestly, I'm guilty of this. I've used scripture as a way to band-aid my feeling, to stuff my feeling, actually. Okay, there's anxiety. Okay, don't be anxious about anything. Don't be anxious about anything. Don't, and that's actually not dealing with that's not the word transforming our souls. That's us having painful self-awareness. And so what does it mean for us to stay with our anxiety and invite Jesus to be with us there?
It seems that a key here is trusting that if we start to feel those feelings, if we name them and feel them and invite Jesus to be part of it, that he is going to be able to handle it when we can't. Because I think as I'm talking about thinking my feelings, but we often are afraid to feel because we are afraid we'll be overwhelmed by our feelings. And that's part of why we sweep them under the rug and say, we're going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Because we're afraid of what those feelings might do to us. So to trust that God is going to be able to meet us there in a way that is helpful and in a way that takes care of us, truly takes care of us, is something that involves faith. I mean, that's the step of faith, I think, is really believing that God will meet us there.
And I think with that, two things, Alex. One is, I think be honest with that fear. If it's there for you, it's the honesty of, God, I think if I really let myself feel these feelings, I'll be overwhelmed with them to a point where I might not be able to get up in the morning. Or I'm afraid that if I let myself feel this, you actually won't show up. Mm-hmm. So it's this rigorous honesty with God. And then secondly, I think there's this, it's really important, I think, to clarify the difference between lament and despair. And for someone listening, they might be like, I feel my feelings all the time, like to the point of I'm drowning in them. And some people can access their feelings very well, and it actually brings them comfort to feel their feelings. I'm talking to Enneagram 4 here, if that's you.
I was just thinking that, actually.
Yeah. But I think the difference between lament and despair is lament is a spiritual discipline that we are invited into. And the difference is despair is you feel those feelings alone, and lament is feeling those feelings with Jesus. And so I want to encourage women to lament, to be sad with Jesus, to experience your envy with Jesus, to experience your fear with Jesus, and not just by yourself alone drowning. There's a difference.
Do you think right now people are having a hard time lamenting things because they feel like they're not that big a deal? So, for example, I have a friend whose daughter is a senior in high school, and she's really having a hard time with the things that her daughter is missing because they're all being canceled. And yet she's grappling with, but I know that in the big scheme of things, as far as suffering that's happening in the world right now, it's not that big of a deal. So can you talk to us about the tendency to maybe minimize or compare when we're lamenting, how we handle those voices in our heads that tell us you shouldn't be sad about this, or this shouldn't be a big deal?
Totally. I think, isn't that a really interesting strategy that we have to deal with our pain, is to minimize it? I think it's that tender invitation to make space for yourself. And I think I would even keep inviting women to ask themselves questions like, why is it that I'm minimizing my pain? Who told me that these things aren't important? Why do I think everyone else's problems require or are more worthy of attention than mine? And so almost creating a curiosity in your soul where you allow yourself to understand where you may have started thinking that what you feel is not valuable. And I mean, that could come from a mom, a dad, a spouse, an older cousin who said, get over it, stop, things like that.
Can you give an example of maybe some women you've watched walk through this process and what that has looked like for them? Or a woman?
Of staying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, I have a really sweet friend of mine who is a single mom, who are just, you know, the heroes of the world, those single
Totally.
moms. And when we first started, our friendship began because our kids were friends. And I think there's this beautiful thing that happens when we have the capacity to stay with ourselves, the truth of our hearts as we stay with God. What that allows us to do is actually stay with other people. So as we have the capacity to enter those places of resistance, we can do that with other people. So this is the gift, I think, that we give each other and that we are encountering even now as we're all in a house in lockdown together. But what I was getting at is with my friend, as I found the freedom to start staying with my own pain, it allowed me to start staying with her in her own pain. And so I think what happens when we have friendships or relationships, we kind of want it easy. We kind of want things to go our way. But there was this ability for our relationship to totally transform because we were learning what it meant to stay with ourselves and stay with our pain and our resistance. And there was the only way to love is through vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And that's that friendship for me was being vulnerable with her and her being vulnerable with me, us truly staying with each other. I'm sure the two of you have experienced this in your friendship, and it's life-changing. When someone stays with you in your ugly and in your mess, it changes you.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful. And there's a lot of mess right now.
Yes,
and so there's a lot of opportunity for us to stay with one another, because whether it's as simple as, man, my family is really falling apart today, all being cooped up, to we're on the brink of complete destruction financially, to, oh my gosh, this person's health is compromised. And, there's so much right now. And for us to stay with one another in those places, this is the time, right? I think about if there was ever a time for us to stay with one another, it is now. Yeah. And I know we can't do that physically, but we can absolutely do that emotionally right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it seems that principle that we have with ourselves in staying, that we need to not do it by our own willpower and strength, but that we can invite Christ into it in our relationships with other people.
Yes.
Help us, because those relationships, when they get hard, we have fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah. And so those instincts may kick in, but then we can remember as women of faith to say, okay, Jesus, I don't know how to help her right now.
Yeah.
One, I can't practically help her because I can't go see her, but also I can't bail out her family financially. I can't fix these problems for her. And so I would think that that's the point of resistance, right? Where we don't know what to do. And so we have to ask Christ to be in there with us.
Yeah.
To be a good friend during that.
Totally. I feel like you just kind of touched on something that's so profound, right? It's the same strategies we have to not deal with our stuff. We take those same strategies into every single relationship. So it's like when you're with someone and the conversation gets awkward or uncomfortable, or their heart starts to leak, we have our strategy. Like for me, an easy one is I use humor. If something gets uncomfortable, like, oh, like how do I crack a joke so we can lighten the mood? And it's like, no, we have the, like, what does it mean to stay with someone? What does it mean to let there be silence with someone? What does it mean to let them cry? What does it mean to like invite them in to see our mess? And that's where it's like, oh, friends, it just takes a lot of courage. But that is where like Christ is with us. Christ is with us. And I love this image. I feel like, in the evangelical language, it's always been, we invite Christ into our hearts. But I love the imagery of, no, God invites us into his heart. And we take his heart into everything and everywhere we go. And God, he keeps inviting us back into his heart, over and over. And we get to do that with other people.
I had someone say one time that I thought was so beautiful, such a beautiful way to put it. She said, your tears are welcome here. And I just thought that was really beautiful. And, what a great thing to say to someone if they're crying and you really have nothing that you can do, but you can just say your tears are welcome here.
Yes. And it's this, that image too is like, hey, you and your heart sit down.
Yeah. I like that.
You and your heart sit down.
Mm-hmm.
You need some rest.
So great. Well, Anjuli, if people want to read more, know more, how can they find you?
Sure. I would love to connect. You can buy my book. Actually, it'll be in Target. So I know that everyone is going straight to the toilet paper, but keep going to the book aisle and you can find Stay. It'll be there. And you can buy it anywhere really online that books are sold. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is lovealways.anjuli. And then, of course, at the Moms Who Love Club.
So great. Well, we have loved having you, and we hope that your staying with your family is a blessing these next weeks.
Thank you so much, you guys. What a gift to be here.
Okay.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
Stay safe.